What's going on, everybody? My name is Michael Weer, and since it's the scariest time of year, I thought it'd be fun to take a break from my normal stuff that I do on my YouTube channel and talk about my favorite ghost story of all time, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Now, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow was written back in 1820 by Washington Irving, and honestly, it's a terrifying ghost story when the Headless Horseman is involved, but it's also a fantastic romance story between Ichabod Crane, Katrina Van Tassel, and Brom Bones. Now, most of you clicking on this are probably familiar with the story, so I'll just give you a quick rundown. You've got Ichabod Crane in love with Katrina, or really her father's wealth, and you've got Brom Bones also in love with Katrina and not happy that Ichabod is in the picture. What I love the most about the book is that it leaves it up to the reader's interpretation at the end. Was Ichabod spirited away by the Headless Horseman, or did Brom Bones do something? Did he commit murder? Did he chase him off? Did Ichabod run in fear because he was terrified of black magic? Or did the Headless Horseman get him? I mean, there's so many what-ifs at the end of that book, and I really love that. Now, while I love the book, and I really do, I try to read it at least once a year, I think this story has stood the test of time and continuously made its way into our pop culture throughout the years because of the many adaptations to both the big and small screen. So with that said, today I'd like to look at all the adaptations of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow on both the big and small screen. Let's do it. The year was 1922. This was the very first adaptation, and it was titled The Headless Horseman. It was a silent film starring Will Rogers as Ichabod Crane. Making a name change to the title and adding a big-name actor would end up becoming a trend that started right here with this adaptation. All accounts show that this adaptation is pretty close to the original story, but we only get 2 brief shots of the horseman. This is the only adaptation filmed on location in the Hudson Valley around Tarrytown, New York. You could still find copies of this on DVD, but it's usually attached to the copy of The Mechanical Man, for some reason. The year was 1949, and Walt Disney Studios was trying to release The Wind in the Willows. Unfortunately for Walt Disney, they couldn't make this film long enough to be considered a feature-length film, and needed to find another movie to pair this with. They ended up pairing it with The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and this collaboration would be known as The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Beloved by many, and my own personal first look at The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, this version is fun for the whole family, and I believe Disney did a good job keeping this as close to the source material as possible. Throughout the movie, you have Brom Bones antagonizing Ichabod. Ichabod isn't a very likable character, and the last act is filled with a terrifying, although made for children, Headless Horseman chase. The year was 1976, and our ghostly friend made an appearance in Scooby-Doo. The episode was called The Headless Horseman of Halloween, where the horseman shows up at a Halloween party at Crane Manor. Of course, the horseman turns out to be just another thief, but this would not be the last time we would see the horseman in a kids' show. The year was 1979. The story was being paired up again, this time in a 3-story horror anthology after-school special known as Once Upon a Midnight Scary, narrated by Vincent Price. We only see the final act of this Ichabod story, but the special itself won 2 Daytime Emmy Awards and was nominated for 2 more. The year is 1980, and, there is going to be Jeff Goldblum in this movie, right? Right? That's right, Jeff Goldblum plays a very timid and confused version of Ichabod Crane. Everyone in the movie looks too old for the role they were given, and the movie focuses too much on Ichabod and Katrina and turns Brom Bones into the village idiot. In the end, this film gives Ichabod the girl and leaves the viewer saying, "You were so obsessed with whether or not you could, you didn't stop to think if you should."
That is one big pile of shit.
The year was 1985, and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow was used as the first episode in Shelley Duvall's Tall Tales and Legends. This series ran from 1985 to 1987 and focused on American-based folktales and stories of bravery. Ichabod squaring off with the Headless Horseman made perfect sense in kicking off this series. The year was 1987 in an episode of the animated show The Real Ghostbusters. This would show descendants of Ichabod Crane being haunted by the spirit of the Headless Horseman, except this horseman swapped out the 1700s look for a punk look and ditched the horse for a motorcycle. Kinda defeats the purpose in my opinion, but let's move on. The year was 1994. In an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark, it focuses on a boy and a girl that help the ghost of Ichabod cross the bridge within Sleepy Hollow and unintentionally makes themselves the target of the Headless Horseman on Halloween night. The year was 1997, and everybody's favorite dog, Wishbone, has an encounter with the Headless Horseman. Wishbone himself takes the place of Ichabod Crane in this episode and spends the episode running from the Headless Horseman. The year was 1999. Calm down, we aren't there yet. The year was 1999, and the Hallmark Channel produced quite possibly the closest film adaptation of the original novel. It opens with Washington Irving at a pub, listening to stories and writing them down. This adaptation shows Ichabod's true intentions, only wanting to marry Katrina for her father's wealth. It also shows a compassionate side to Brom Bones, who is primarily used as a joke or a bully in other adaptations. The only true flaw to this movie is the budget. While the plot is enjoyable and true to the source material, with the lack of money for effects and certain props, it makes viewing very difficult for the average moviegoer. The year was still 1999, not yet, we'll get there. The year was still 1999, a computer-animated movie that looks like one giant PlayStation 1 graphic came out. This time, William H. Macy would voice the role of Ichabod. In this telling, Brom Bones actually makes a deal with the Headless Horseman to remove Ichabod from the picture. The year is still 1999. That's right, we got to the one that everybody's heard about. This film dropped the word legend and just called the movie Sleepy Hollow. This is probably the most well-known adaptation of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and was a huge commercial success, grossing over $207 million on a $70 million budget. This film is also known for straying away from the source material more than any other movie adaptation. Tim Burton left his stamp on this movie, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it just doesn't. Johnny Depp plays Ichabod Crane this time around, and instead of being a timid schoolmaster, he plays a detective sent from the big city to investigate recent murders, where the victims have had their heads taken by the Headless Horseman. The Horseman is used as more of a pawn in this film, and all of the characters meet a definitive end, as opposed to the very open-ended feeling that the original story gave us. They also did the single worst thing that a story containing the Headless Horseman could do, and that is to give the Headless Horseman a head! What were they thinking? The year was 2000, and fresh off the success of Sleepy Hollow came a movie trying to capitalize on that success, Sleepy Hollow High. This rushed, low-budget adaptation centers on 5 delinquent classmates. Set in modern times, these classmates must perform community service and avoid being taken by the Headless Horseman. The year was 2004, and again they thought bringing the Headless Horseman into modern day was the way to go with this film. Set in modern day, Ian Cranston, a descendant of Ichabod Crane, must battle the Headless Horseman with help of his girlfriend Karen and a local bully named Brody, and a caretaker named Claus Van Ripper. Clearly a modern take on the names as well as the story. The year was still 2004, and an episode of the 6th season of the TV show Charmed, which shows the stars facing off with the Headless Horseman. The year was 2013, and the Smurfs took their turn adapting this tale in The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Okay, earlier I said the worst thing that could be done was giving it a head to the Headless Horseman, but honestly, it's Smurfs. I'll be honest, it's Smurfs. The year was 2013, and instead of the Headless Horseman jumping into other people's shows, he would get his own show in Sleepy Hollow. Now this adaptation would go from making Ichabod a school teacher to the Revolutionary War redcoat turned spy and American defender that actually fights the Headless Horseman on a field of battle, but both of them land a killing blow and go into a magical hibernation for several hundred years, only to wake up in present-day Sleepy Hollow. Ichabod does everything he can to stop the Horseman and try to make sense of everything, while he himself is a character out of time. This show goes away from the source material almost entirely, making the show more about demons and monsters rather than folktales and love stories. It would run from October of 2013 to May of 2017, where it was ultimately canceled. The year is 2022, and finally, we have Paramount Pictures announcing that they are rebooting the 1999 version of Sleepy Hollow. I actually covered it on this channel earlier this year, and you can check that video out right now. And so guys, those are the many adaptions for The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Now the question is to you, which one is your favorite? Because I'd like to know, so throw that down in the comment section down below. And real quick, I'll let you guys know what my favorite adaptation is. It's none of these. I'll be honest with you guys, I like a lot of this stuff. I don't love any of it because I don't think anything has come close to the source material as my true favorite, and that is a play that was done by the Bethany Lutheran College. You can actually check that out. I linked it down below. They do a great job with the source material, and that is huge for this story because so many times the adaptations go so far away from the original source material. And because it's a play, you're not expecting much out of the budget, and they do a good job with that Headless Horseman chase at the end, and I just have a good time with it. But that's just my opinion. I'm sure other people love the 1999 Johnny Depp or the Smurf version. There's got to be somebody out there that likes the Smurfs. I don't know why. But guys, that's my video. I appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.